A $20 million lawsuit exposing the backroom dealings of Formula One. A champion driver publicly accusing one of the most powerful team bosses in the world of lies and false promises. And a career caught in the crossfire. What really happened between Alex Palou and McLaren? Over the past few days, the trial in London has brought explosive testimonies to light that are shaking the paddock, and today we're going to analyze every detail of what was said in court. We're continuing our coverage of the case we've been bringing you all week. The situation has escalated in a way few could have imagined, with Alex Palou himself, the reigning IndyCar champion, taking the stand to give his side of the story. And he didn't hold back. McLaren is suing Palou and his management company for nearly $20 million for breach of contract, a contract that would have placed him as the team's IndyCar driver starting in 2023. But for Palou, the story is far more complex and involves a promise that, according to him, was the basis for everything, a seat in Formula One. During his testimony, Palou was emphatic in denying that he was just using McLaren as a stepping stone to F1, stating he was totally fine to drive an IndyCar. The turning point, he claims, came when McLaren announced the signing with Oscar Piastri. Palou revealed in his statement a conversation he had with Zak Brown, the CEO of McLaren Racing. He alleges that Brown told him not to worry, claiming that signing Piastri was not his decision, but that of the team principal at the time, Andreas Seidel. More than that, Brown allegedly assured Palou that Oscar's performance would be evaluated against mine for the 2024 seat, and that, from his point of view, his F1 chance was not affected. It was at that exact moment, according to the driver, that his trust crumbled. In his own words, Palou said, "I knew everything had changed, and from that point on, I started to be more willing to stay with Chip Ganassi in the future." McLaren's defense, on the other hand, tried to paint Palou as someone who misled the team, who never had any real intention of racing for them in IndyCar. When McLaren's lawyer accused him of stringing McLaren along, Palou responded directly that he was twisting the story. For the driver, the issue became a moral choice. He stated in court that he had to make a decision: get out of a contract with someone who had never lied to me, Chip Ganassi, or someone who had done the opposite, McLaren. A direct and very serious accusation against Zak Brown, who was present in the courtroom and heard everything personally. Palou's financial situation was also laid bare dramatically. He stated that he has no way of paying the amount McLaren is demanding, and because of this whole process, he is already suffering the consequences. He explained that Chip Ganassi agreed to cover the trial costs, but in return, he accepted a pay cut. In his words, "I know I am not being paid the amount of other drivers. I am not in the top 3 of the highest paid drivers, and I am not going to be for the foreseeable future. For this indemnity, I am going to have to pay for it with my base salary in the future, and I am already doing it." This shows the magnitude of the risk he's taking and his conviction in his side of the story. This legal dispute goes far beyond a simple breach of contract. It exposes the complexity of negotiations, the backroom promises, and the weight that the hope of a Formula One seat carries in a driver's career. The outcome of this case could set an important precedent for future contracts in motorsport. And of course, we at Formula News USA will keep a close eye on every development to bring you the most complete analysis. To not miss a single detail of this story and to continue receiving in-depth content that goes beyond the headlines, the best way to help us grow is by subscribing to the channel and hitting the like button on this video. When you do that, YouTube understands that our content is relevant and recommends it to more motorsport fans. And speaking of which, comment below and let us know what city you're watching from. It's incredibly rewarding for us to see how far our work is reaching and to build this ever stronger community. Leaving the London courts aside for a moment, let's now travel to Maranello, where another storm is brewing. But this time, the crisis is internal, happening within the gates of Formula One's most iconic team. Ferrari, which started the 2025 season with immense expectations generated by the arrival of Lewis Hamilton to form a dream team with Charles Leclerc, finds itself in an alarming situation. The team is not only far from the title fight, but seems to have regressed, and a scathing analysis from former F1 driver Derek Daly points to a surprising cause: the driver pairing itself. According to Daly, Ferrari made a fundamental strategic error in its team composition. He argues that successful teams operate with drivers of opposing skill sets to extract the maximum from development. On one hand, you need the instant reflex driver, the raw talent who can push any car to its limit at any moment. On the other, you need the feel-sensitive driver, who is capable of reading the car's behavior, reporting the nuances to the engineers, and thereby guiding development in the right direction. One driver pushes the other, and the team benefits from this duality. The problem, in Daly's view, is that Ferrari hired two drivers of the first type. This is a heavy criticism. We're talking about Lewis Hamilton, the most successful driver in history, and Charles Leclerc, one of the greatest talents of his generation. But for Daly, their individual talent isn't translating into collective progress. He believes that neither Hamilton nor Leclerc is providing the kind of detailed information that the engineers in Maranello need to fix the car's flaws. The direct consequence is a vicious cycle. The car doesn't improve because the feedback isn't ideal, and the drivers continue to have to extract the maximum from limited equipment, masking deficiencies with their raw talent but failing to pinpoint the solution. The results on the track seem to corroborate this theory. The season is well underway, and Ferrari has yet to secure a single victory. Even worse, Lewis Hamilton, in his debut year for the Scuderia, hasn't even made it to the podium. That's a shocking statistic for a driver of his caliber. Daly goes even further and questions the signing of Hamilton itself, suggesting it was a spectacular marketing move, but perhaps not the best decision from a technical standpoint. He states that there is a time in every athlete's life where your instincts and reflexes are never as good as they were 15 years earlier, and that those days are gone for Ferrari. For him, bringing Hamilton in was a way to attract global attention, but not necessarily to solve the team's chronic problems. What does this mean in practice? It means Ferrari might have the fastest driver pairing on the grid on paper, but at the same time, one of the least effective for long-term development work. If engineers receive information from very similar perspectives, they might end up optimizing the car within a very narrow performance window, failing to solve the project's fundamental flaws. It's like trying to solve a complex puzzle with access to only half the pieces. You might be able to form an image, but it will never be complete. And this analysis leads us directly to the next point of the crisis in Maranello, because if the driver's feedback is a problem, the fundamental design of the car they're trying to give feedback on appears to be an even bigger mistake. Ferrari's failures are much deeper than imagined, and they are rooted in the very concept of the SF25. We've talked about how the driver's style might be impacting development, but the truth is they are wrestling with a car that was born with chronic problems. A deep technical analysis from expert Paolo Filicetti sheds light on a crucial decision made in Maranello, a wrong turn that may have doomed Ferrari's 2025 season. Early in the year, the team found itself at a crossroads. Focus development on aerodynamics or on vehicle dynamics, that is, the suspension. The decision, led by technical director Loic Serra, was to prioritize the suspension. The logic behind this was to create a more stable mechanical platform that would allow the car's aerodynamics to work more consistently, without being so sensitive to ride height variations. In theory, it sounded like a solid plan. And, in part, the objective was achieved. The problem? A devastating side effect that no one anticipated. The SF25 became a stubborn car, almost completely unresponsive to setup changes. In practice, this is a disaster. If the setup the team brings from the simulator perfectly matches the track conditions, the car can be fast. But if the temperature changes, if the grip level evolves, the car simply doesn't adapt, no matter what the engineers try to adjust. The Singapore Grand Prix was the perfect example of this nightmare. The team battled chronic understeer all weekend. Attempts to fix the problem were so futile that Charles Leclerc himself, in a moment of frustration, described the setup changes they tried as stupid. He even attempted a radical approach, loading up the front end so aggressively that it left the rear completely unstable, all in an attempt to make the car turn. This shows the level of desperation to find a solution that simply doesn't exist in the car's DNA. In a Formula One, where the gap between the top 10 is often less than 0.2 of a second, the ability to optimize the car over the weekend is crucial. Gaining half a tenth from the setup can mean moving up 5 positions on the grid. Ferrari, with its inflexible car, simply can't play that game. And the problem gets worse. While the technical team spent about 3 months focused on this suspension upgrade, the aerodynamics department was effectively sidelined. Resources and time that could have been used to introduce at least 2 aerodynamic updates were all channeled into the suspension. Sources from within the team suggest that minor updates to the car's underfloor, which were planned, were shelved. Some believe these aerodynamic improvements would have been far more beneficial and could have led to more effective overall development. This design rigidity manifested in another brutal way in Singapore: the brakes. Ferrari has suffered all season with a thermal imbalance between the right and left rear brakes. On the most demanding track on the calendar for brakes, the problem became critical. From the early laps of the race, Leclerc was already being instructed to lift and coast to try to cool the brakes. The team, aware of the problem, made a risky choice. To avoid sacrificing straight-line speed, they opted not to increase the brake duct ventilation. It was a decision that proved catastrophic, with the overheating spreading to the front axle as well and ruining the race for both drivers. With a car that doesn't respond, frustrated drivers, and questionable technical decisions, the internal pressure at Maranello is reaching a boiling point. The cracks are starting to appear not just in the car, but in the relationships between the people within the team. And that pressure spilled over publicly after the Singapore Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc's frustration was visible on the track, but it was his comments to the press that, according to reports from the Italian media, truly soured the mood in Maranello. Leclerc gave a brutally honest assessment of the situation, stating that Ferrari had fallen behind. In his words, "McLaren has always had the same gap on us compared to the beginning of the year. Red Bull took a step from Monza and are at the same level as McLaren. Mercedes is now at the same level as McLaren and Red Bull. And then there's us." He went even further, painting a bleak picture for the team's future in the season. "The picture we've seen this weekend is going to be what the rest of the season looks like for us." For a homegrown driver who grew up dreaming of winning with Ferrari, that is an almost complete declaration of defeat. According to the respected Italian newspaper Corriere dello Sport, these comments were not well received. The report states that among the engineers themselves, there are those who are angry with Leclerc for his uncompromising criticism of the car and how it is managed. Another publication, La Gazzetta dello Sport, stated that Leclerc's comments paint a discouraging picture of the entire Maranello environment and that relations between the various departments of the team are strained. This disconnect became even clearer when team principal Fred Vasseur gave his view. While Leclerc said there was no hope, Vasseur claimed the pace was in the car, but the team failed to extract it, calling the situation mega frustrating. This difference in narrative between the driver and team principal in public is a clear sign that the crisis is deep. And when a crisis reaches this level, speculation about leadership changes becomes inevitable. This is where a heavyweight name comes into play: Christian Horner. In the opinion of former driver Johnny Herbert, Ferrari desperately needs a leader who knows how to create a winning culture. He believes the team should have made a bigger push to sign Adrian Newey, and that now their prime target has to be Christian. Herbert's logic is that Ferrari has all the ingredients: the drivers, the history, the resources. What's missing is the right person at the helm to put it all together. He uses the example of how Horner at Red Bull created the perfect environment for a genius like Newey to have the freedom to create. He argues that Ferrari still doesn't have that figure, that leader who attracts top talent and gives them the freedom to flourish. Of course, a change at the top seems unlikely in the short term, as Fred Vasseur recently signed a contract extension, with Ferrari betting on stability. However, Herbert warns that if the start of the 2026 season with the new regulations is poor again, the pressure on Vasseur will be immense and something will have to be done. And so, we're left with two scenarios that define the present and future of Formula One. On one side, a legal battle exposing the promises and perils of driver contracts. On the other, the crisis of the sport's most legendary team fighting its own technical and internal demons. What's your take on all of this? Do you think Alex Palou is right in his fight with McLaren? And what about Ferrari? Is the problem the car, the drivers, or the leadership? We genuinely want to know what you think, so leave your comment down below. Your discussions add so much value to our community. Before we sign off, I just want to say that as a non-monetized channel, your support is what keeps us going. We don't run ads, so your engagement is everything. When you subscribe to Formula News USA and share your thoughts in the comments, you're not just joining a conversation, you're actively helping this channel grow and reach more F1 fans like you. It's the most powerful way to show your support, and it means the world to us. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.